Thomas says you're in Georgia and that you have evidence that Jesus exists, and you think you feel that you know too much and we should already know this. Is that true, Thomas?
Yeah, hey, how
Hi,
you doing today?
you're on with Jenna and Phil. We're doing pretty good.
Howdy, Thomas.
Right. Hey, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ask you questions first.
Sure.
Ask a few questions, but yeah. Well, I'm gonna scripture first. Jesus said.
Wait, we're gonna do scripture first, or we're gonna do questions first?
Yeah, we'd rather talk to you instead of your book.
I'm gonna read scripture first. Okay.
No, let's not do scripture
Let's
first.
not do scripture. Let's
This
talk to
is
you.
so. Do you know what show this is?
I'm gonna try to prove.
Hey, Thomas. Do you know what show this is?
Excuse me.
Do you know what this is? The show is about. Do you know what we're here for?
You want evidence, evidence.
Sure.
To prove there's evidence that proves there's a God.
Okay.
There is a God, or
Okay. Is this scripture going to give us any evidence for a God?
well, yeah, well, that will be who you think it is. Jesus says there'll be many come in my name saying, I am Christ. Not saying they are. Saying I am Christ, and will deceive many. He said he was the Son of Man, right? He never claimed to be Christ.
So wait. So because he never claimed to be Christ, that's evidence for what?
That ain't evidence. You just follow me out.
Okay. I'll hang on for a second. We'll give this a second.
All right. You remember his teaching on judgment. Judge not, be
Yo,
not
what up?
Teaching is no good if he don't go by it, right? I mean, it's so. And John 8:5.
Okay. Hey, Thomas. I'm stopping you. Where are we going with this? Are we telling a story, or I'm sorry?
I'm gonna try to show you some evidence if you'll just be patient.
Yeah, that'd be nice. You know, I did learn there was a famous movie that said only the true Savior would deny that he's the Savior. I think that's the Holy Grail.
I deny that I'm the Savior.
I only use one now.
I denied that I'm the Savior.
Yeah, only the true Savior would deny.
Well, let's not mock. Hold on. I truly want to know, Thomas. I'm sorry. I don't want to mock you. I want to know what your evidence is that Jesus exists, and if this scripture is evidence, and will it convince me
What
that
evidence?
Jesus exists?
Okay.
Actually, Jesus may or may not exist. I don't.
He is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, right?
No.
What would it mean if he did exist?
Was he not? Is it only don't say he's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords?
Jesus.
He didn't write anything.
Don't say he's the King of Kings.
Hold on. Let's break this down. If Jesus exists, that means what?
Well, let me finish. It says, the scripture says God cannot tell a lie, right?
So if Jesus exists, that means what? What does that mean for us? Does that mean anything for me at all?
Well, how do you think he is? I mean, who do you think he is?
I don't know.
I never met him.
Okay.
You tell me.
What he says, he told the apostles in John 8:5.
No, I want to know what it means. Oh, I guess you're telling me. I'm sorry. He tells the apostles.
He said that your father is not my father, right? He said your father is a liar, murderer, the devil from the beginning. Remember his teaching on judgment. Judge not, and be not judged. He said, "Lest of your father ye will do." And now.
No, you're not answering my question. I'm asking you a question, and you're reading me a quote.
They supposedly wrote part of the Bible, didn't they? Whether they did or not.
No, I'm not asking who wrote the Bible. I'm asking you what it would mean if Jesus existed. For me. I don't want to hear a quote. I want to know. I'm asking you a question.
Okay. He's not who everybody thinks he is, okay? That's what I'm saying. I have that evidence.
Okay.
I don't know what he is.
He tells you who he is.
What tells me who he is? I'm sorry. I'm trying to work with you here, Thomas. I really want to know.
I know. Well, this is hard. Okay, can I just ask you some questions?
Well,
You said, this is how you got to figure it out. I mean, it's the only way to figure it out is by question.
So if you ask me a question, I'm all right, Thomas. I'm all right with you asking me a question, but I'm not all right with you reading me scripture.
Okay, well, let's just pretend like you're Judas and you're at the Last Supper, okay? And you're planning to betray him for 30 silver coins or whatever. And when he says, one of you are going to betray me, and I know how we are. Judas would have been going, oh no, he's on to me. He'd be going to plan B, but no, he still went ahead and done it. And then went and hung himself. Does that make sense?
So are you saying that if we don't believe in Jesus, then we will want to hang ourselves?
And what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out what you are saying.
Why did Judas, if he was planning on doing that, and then he called him out on it, why would he go ahead and do it? He would back out, because that's how we are.
So this is a story from a long time ago that may or may not have happened literally or metaphorically. What does that mean for me?
Well, it didn't sound like to me. I won't tell you, but Baptist was the one who brought the message of the gospel, right? He had the gospel of the good news to come, and you would think the one who sent him would know something about it. And Jesus asked that question when the Pharisees asked him, by what authority do you teach? He said, once he wouldn't answer the question, that would bother us. He said, I'll ask you a question. Do you think John the Baptist, the one that sent John the Baptist, sent me? And they said, we can't tell. He said, neither can I. And he said that for two reasons, because he wasn't allowed to tell who sent him.
Thomas?
And the question needs to be answered, who sent John the Baptist?
Thomas, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I've actually made it a goal of mine to work on not interrupting this episode. But you're telling us another story, and I understand this story may or may not happen. These people may or may not have existed. So what?
Okay. You want me to back it up with...
No, I don't. I just want to know, for me right now, sitting in this chair...
Do you have anything that's not in the Bible? Because we don't actually accept the Bible. You have something that is actual evidence outside of the Bible.
Okay. I cannot tell a lie. Our first president backs it up. He said, I cannot tell a lie. Jesus said, no one is worthy. No, you keep interrupting me, ma'am. And, I'm trying to be nice.
I understand. I'm sorry.
If you would listen.
I don't want to anymore. I'm sorry. I'm trying to tell you that I've tried. And I'm done with this call.
I mean, you're not listening. You're not listening.
I tried listening. I will listen to this over again. I will listen to this over again, and I will critique myself to the hardest, and I will try to figure out where I went wrong. But I'm pretty sure that I asked you a few times what it would mean if Jesus existed, and I still haven't gotten an answer. I got you trying to read scripture. I don't know what scripture has anything to do with me.
It's not got nothing to do with you, but you just keep interrupting. You won't let me finish what I'm saying, and I'm not interrupting you.
I understand that, Thomas. I'm sorry, but we have a really short show, and I just kind of need a summary of why this is important at all. Why are we talking about this?
It's-
Why does it matter who Jesus
because
is or what he did?
It's evidence.
Why does it matter?
Well, it must not, but I mean,
Well, but if it doesn't, then
there'll be no need for prophesying after the cross. Abraham Lincoln said, why predict the future when you can create it? I mean, does that not, Jesus said, no one is worthy, no, not one. That could be true if everybody is. Abraham Lincoln, he backs it up. He said, one man's freedom or misery, one man's...
No, I'm sorry, Thomas. Please, can you work on it?
It says
Please call
one man's
back.
freedom don't
Call
come
back
from
when I am
another
on.
man's
Thomas,
misery.
Thomas, please call back when I'm on. I want to continue this conversation because I am very interested in why you're stuck on this. I want to know. But can you possibly, before you call,
As to what he said.
Paul, next time, please put it into a short question. If you have a question for me, I'd like to be asked a question. If you have some kind of hard evidence for Jesus, I'd like to know why is that important. I want to talk to you, so please call back, Thomas.
I disagree.
And that's totally fine. I'm interested. I'm really curious.
I am interested, but I don't think he has the capacity to answer the question you're asking.
I believe you, and I couldn't if I was asked that question when I was in that state of mind either. And that's why I think is that it's important that we ask it, even if there's no answer coming out, because he may have never heard these questions before.
Yeah.
And I know that I hadn't heard a lot of the questions that I ask myself now. I'd never even considered these as questions because I had been so discouraged from wonder, from questions, from asking. And so this is hard for people, and this is important to people. And
It's
so
important to them.
I do apologize for talking over people who are stumbling over the...
Of women stated that they want a man that trims his balls because nobody wants a bush out there. Nobody wants to go on a scavenger hunt to have to find it. Think about the optical illusion that you create when you cut down the hedge. Your boy looks longer. And our new Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 comes with a clip card.
Exclusive clip of Matt and Glenn discussing the trans controversy that divided the atheist experience, plus more bonus content. Sign up at thebigconversation.show.
Was it wrong for Hitler and the Nazis to, euthanize disabled people and gay people and people that they felt were outside of their circle of who they considered to be human? What was the kind of...
I'm not convinced they considered them outside the circle of what they considered to be human. They had a view that these were somehow inferior humans. I think they would all acknowledge they were human, just that they were somehow inferior or less diverse. Race, things like that.
Master race.
So it's one of those things where people say,
because a lot of people would say Hitler was wrong about a fact there, whereas from what I'm wondering, and we're getting to the issue of is there this objective moral value to humanity?
Well, it reminds me of the people who argue that, hey, slavery is really good for the slave owners. And so if you're a slave owner, you can look at this and say, hey, slavery is a good thing because it benefits me. The problem is that when you look at the larger picture, it's actually not necessarily good for the slave owners. And beginning to recognize that every member of society affects potentially every other member, fundamentally changes, and it shifts our in-group, out-group dynamic. So that when Hitler goes after the Jews for whatever religious reasons he had, for whatever superior, uber guy reasons he had, that's fundamentally different from whether or not killing them makes society worse or better. And it's kind of this thing of, oh, this is what I think makes us better, which is independent from what actually makes us think better. Nobody, not Sam nor I nor anybody, is suggesting that if we begin with an agreement on well-being as a foundation, that there aren't going to be things that we think we have the right answer about and find out we were wrong.
At that stage, then, it would seem like instead of having World War II, we would have a symposium in which the Nazis would present their papers and others would present other papers, and then we'd have a panel and we'd discuss them and we'd try and thrash it out. At what stage do you say that their vision for updating, for evolving, for having a master race, at what stage do you say that that is morally unjustified and therefore there is a just war that can be fought against them?
I don't know that there's an answer for that apart from assessing the individual situations, which is what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have to rely on a God for it.
Well,
Are you suggesting that?
we relied on 1939 years of Christian understanding of what is the good life, and the good life is the sacrifice of the strong for the protection of the weak.
Okay.
And Hitler was doing the exact opposite of that.
If the person in power, say the Hitler, simply has a very different conception of what the best is for his life compared to your life, then do you have any moral, if you like, force to say you're doing something wrong? Isn't he just going with his preferences as opposed to your preferences?
Yes.
So what is it that's up here that says those preferences are better and those preferences
Right.
are worse?
This is
What is that?
This is the objection that's often launched. So I could sit down with Hitler. I wouldn't, because he's dead. But I could sit down with Hitler, and if we could find the thing that we agree about, that we care about, we can then demonstrate which one of our preferences are in conflict with that. If he because what we do as human beings is often delude ourselves, and we look at our preferences and assume they're right, but they're going to conflict with something foundational, which is basically at the beginning of that superiority to secular morality talk. I talked about how you could begin with, let's say, 3 foundational premises. Life is generally preferable to death, health is generally preferable to sickness, and pleasure is generally preferable to pain. None of them are universally true. Sometimes pain is preferable. Sometimes death may be preferable, which is why I support death with dignity for people who no longer have any hope of a quality of life and with their individual autonomy and control over their own life. But you can begin with those and you can build something. But you can start with anything. You can start with death is better than life, and what you get to is extinction. Sure. And so if I find something, I think Hitler probably, I mean, there's the old joke, Hitler probably loved his mother too. Hitler probably valued human life, just had justifications for excluding certain others.
Right. And you think you could reason Hitler into...
I don't know that I necessarily could.
Why
because
wouldn't he
there are
reason
people,
you into his way?
It might be. I'm not saying that that's not necessarily the case. I'm saying if you can show that what your actions are and the things that you're justifying are in conflict with a foundation that you agree with, that's where the problem is.
Right. And what if it's the establishment of the master race? Because if the fittest do survive, then wouldn't it be nice if the fittest should survive? Like we take that hop, skip, and a jump, and
sure. And then you ask what criteria are you using to determine fittest?
And again, we're having a symposium when we should be fighting a war, and this is.
No, we should always be having a symposium so we don't have to fight wars. Why would anybody ever say we should be fighting a war?
You sound like Neville Chamberlain. You know, I found peace in our time with Hitler because I'm going to sit down with him.
Well,
and
I'm sorry that advocating for reasoning rather than blowing crap up is so anathema.
I think we tried to reason with him.
I'm not saying, here's where the confusion is. I'm not saying after the war started, send Matt in, and he can sit down with Hitler.
He's very clever.
We're using a precise example to talk about a more abstract one, which is essentially, let's say you and I disagree on, you want to take some action, you want to exterminate some portion of the population. The process that I'm advocating for is for us to figure out what shared foundation we have, if any, which we'll find something shared, and show which one of us is more in conflict with and which one of us is more in keeping with that foundation. Is it always going to be the case? No. But you asked how you would actually solve that, and I would. And if it didn't work, I'd kill him.
and if well-being, just very vaguely just defined, if well-being is the metric that we're using, and if Hitler could say, oh, we are so much better off without the disabled, you have no idea. You know, we're soaring our industry, our numbers are through the roof. Our well-being is doing incredibly well once we eliminate the sick, the weak, the handicapped. Is he right at that point?
Well, That's when you go through and you talk about what data are you looking at to define well-being, because
What data?
yeah.
You haven't.
Oh my gosh, it's not like I'm talking.
No. Okay, but this is happening right now. Okay, there is a Down syndrome population, for instance, that's being eliminated globally right now, and we're having a conversation about it. Okay, and I think it's better to have a conversation than to blow people up and all that sort of stuff. But it's a very live issue. I mean, it's not just the Godwin rule.
I'm just going with the example that you say Hitler comes to me and says, "You wouldn't believe how much better our society is now that we're eliminating these people." Then you have to go back and look at it and say, okay, what have you lost? Is your society better? And are you just did you in fact? How do you know that you didn't lose a cure for disease? How do you know that you're not worse off because it has fundamentally changed your psyche? How do you know that you're not worse off because you've lost art, because you've lost human connection? It's not just, see, this is one of the problems that you can point out to people that are going down there. Well-being is not just what's my financial
people's
well-being.
lives worth something, even if they didn't produce a cure for cancer or great works of art? Even if they just, sat around and consumed all the resources that all the able-bodied people were doing.
If somebody sat around and did nothing but consume, I don't know how you could consider that as adding value. You have to point to something where they're adding value to society.
So they have to achieve, they have to add value.
So,
but they don't have value.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying when I say that there's no intrinsic value to it, but that I value human life, and that everybody, almost everybody.
So who's like you, Matt Dillon?
I'm speaking specifically for me, but also
if
I think
else doesn't. You try to reason them out of it, but
what? Yes. What do you? Okay. See, you sit there. Okay, let's try it. I don't value human life. Change my mind.
Look at the Nazis. Look at that vision of humanity.
I don't care. I don't value human life. Change my mind.
You have yourself a humanity that has dignity. You might not believe it right now.
I don't. Change my mind.
I'm trying to change your mind by saying, without achievements, without attributes, without contributing a penny of money, without expending a calorie of effort.
I worry, by the way, that this is going to get cut as if this is really me saying this when it's not.
And I'm counseling you, so I'm your therapist.
I don't even understand why this point is remotely contentious.
What's your point here, though? That if you simply choose not to believe humans have value, then nothing that he's going to say is going to change your mind.
Right, telling me that there's a God or a Jesus, that's not going to necessarily change my mind any more than my line of reasoning.
So what's your point then, Glenn? Because
my point is the changing of the mind is not the most important factor that's going on here. It's the immorality of eliminating a whole people group. That's probably a little bit more important.
And I think
we're talking about a conversation.
We're talking about someone who doesn't value human life, not what they've done, but what they think.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to figure out a way to change their mind.
And the best way we've discovered over 2,000 years is to tell a story about the God who becomes the weak and despised and the marginalized and the single cell in Mary's womb.
And I think we can do better than telling a story.
But you think, but what evidence do you have?
Well, give it a shot. There's no reason to think it's not worse.
Except all the scientific studies that are cited.
For an exclusive clip of Matt and Glenn discussing the trans controversy that divided the atheist experience, plus more bonus content, sign up at thebigconversation.show.
Jeff in Aptos, California, thanks for waiting.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Or I can. I can't speak for Don.
I'm good.
Just trying to figure out some more shit to write up on this board.
Why is it necessary to use science as the main primary to prove whether or not a supernatural actually exists?
It's not.
When you because
it's
when
not.
you think about it, you what?
Science cannot currently investigate, confirm the existence of the supernatural at all. So When you say, why is it necessary to use science to do this? Science can't do that currently until somebody comes up with a mechanism, be scientific, to investigate the supernatural.
Or unless the religious claim is about something in the real world that supposedly God is doing.
But you still can't get back to the God.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you could say, let's take prayer, for example. People like to cite, prayer as a confirmation that a God exists. Well, we can test intercessory prayer, and we can at most determine a correlation between, hey, these people prayed for something and it either did or didn't happen. And by the way, when we do that test, prayer fails. But if it were to succeed, we still wouldn't know why it succeeded. Even if only men from the First Baptist Church of Harvester were able to consistently have their prayers clearly fulfilled, so where they prayed for stuff and we can verify that it came through consistently at, let's say, an 85 to 90%, what conclusion can we reach? Is it because there's actually a God answering that? We don't know what the mechanism is, and we have no way to investigate it currently.
I mean, that's why I'm a deist. I don't believe that we can actually.
Well, how can you be a deist if you just acknowledge that we can't investigate to confirm the existence of the supernatural? I mean.
Okay, so there must have been some miscommunication, because my question, all my question has to do with is how why do scientists think that the only way to prove that a God exists is through science?
That's not the case. I already said that's not the case.
What other way would you recommend we do it?
Now, if you want to, if your question is, how do we go about determining whether or not something is true? Science is the single most consistently reliable method for doing this. Do you have some other method by which we can confirm your deist proposition?
No, that's not the point. The point is that
that's my question.
I know, and my answer is basically a question to you, saying why are you assuming that the universe or the cause of the universe is scientific?
I did not. Okay, so I have not said it all. I have never mentioned in this episode what my view of the cause of the universe is. You said you're a deist. You said that why is it that scientists think science is the only way to know anything? And we've now asked you, what other way is there? Because you have a belief, and I'd like to know what the justification for it is. And if it's not science, that's your prerogative. I just want to know why you believe this.
My belief is, first I have to make the point that when you make the belief that there is no God, immediately that.
Hold on. Atheism is the lack of a belief in God because of the lack of evidence for God.
Right there, that is the problem, because you are assuming that a supernatural can only exist if science says so.
No. We're not talking about what actually exists. We're talking about whether or not we have a rational justification to believe that the something exists. Yeah. I'm not making a proclamation. I'm not making a proclamation that there are no gods. I'm saying I do not believe there are any because there is not sufficient evidence and reason to believe.
Which is the same standpoint. Like you.
The same standpoint is what? Half of an assertion.
Because you are assuming that only something scientific.
No.
You see, we're on the show every week asking people, what is your evidence for God? And we have yet to hear anything that's of any substance.
I'm not. Here's the argument that you're presenting. You're saying, you atheists deny the possibility of God because you will only allow in scientific or information of a scientifically verifiable sort. That's not the case. I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's a God because nobody has presented a reasonable case that could lead to the accepting justifiably that the claim is true. And now here we are.
Exactly.
And exactly. You keep saying exactly. I don't even think you know what exactly means. You are a deist, so you believe that there's a God. Why?
Do I believe that there's a God?
Yeah, I mean, was why too hard in any of the 3 times I've asked you so
Yeah,
far?
what's your awesome evidence for this God?
It is, so you think that I actually have evidence, but like my
No, Jeff, stop and listen for a second, please. If I ask you why you believe something, and the first words out of your mouth are you've already fucked up. Because why you believe has nothing to do with me. You don't get to say, okay, let me tell you why I believe, and it's because you think blah. No, that's not how why I believe works. I want to know why you believe, so don't start by talking about what you think I believe.
It is more probable.
Determine that it's more probable.
Because the energy and everything existing this isn't really probable for something to come from nothing.
Okay, so when you say that, Jeff, stop. No, stop. No, you can't. Because you're not answering the question. When you say it's more probable, and I ask how you determined it's more probable, and your next 3 sentences out of your mouth are just another assertion that it's more probable, you have not answered the question. How did you determine that it's more probable that a God exists than doesn't?
Because energy doesn't come from nothing. That doesn't make sense. How does that make sense? If you can.
What does that have to do? What does it have to do with a God or probability? You even know what probability is?
Yes, I know what probability.
Okay, and so we're talking about when you take a number of potential explanations and you evaluate how likely they are to be the explanation for something else.
Of an outcome.
You calculate
based
probability.
For a likelihood. And
a
furthermore, you have to
value
do
is
both
a
sides. You have to
probability.
compute the likelihood of both,
Yeah.
and then compare them at the end of the day.
And when you say that just energy just can't come from nothing, first of all, that has absolutely nothing to do with the God, and second of all, it doesn't get us anywhere near a probability. You can continue.
We can continue.
Well,
I don't know.
ask me, why do you think it's more probable for a God to exist than not?
Because thinking that something can just poof into this is it's kind of beyond.
You know, something just poofed into this.
I just don't really understand how.
That's the answer. That is the answer. You don't really understand. When you say something like, oh, to think that something could just poof, not only are you not in any way describing the scientific models accurately, but you clearly don't have enough of an understanding of what we do in fact know and what we don't know. And your fallacy specifically is an argument from incredulity. Essentially, your argument is, I don't see how something could come about without a God. Therefore, I'm convinced there was a God. And that is a fallacious argument.
No, I've heard. All I'm saying is.
Wait.
Doesn't exist.
That it was more probable. If something's more probable, you believe because it's faith-based.
It is a faith probability.
Faith by probability. It's a faith by probability.
Do them a lot of good. A faith-like probability. Is there anything that one couldn't believe based on faith?
Couldn't believe based on faith?
Yeah, I mean, well, couldn't I say that white people are better than black people, and I just believe this based on faith? Okay, so is faith any mechanism that gets you any closer to the truth?
No, but it is a standpoint that.
So why would you then believe something based on faith if it's not going to get you any closer to the truth? Do you care about what's true?
Because I acknowledge that there is a chance that science can't answer everything.
Okay,
Therefore,
if it can't answer it, why do you care about what's actually true, or are you just going to go with what feels good to you?
I care about. I mean, I was raised Christian, and now that I was able to understand exactly how the Christian religion actually came out, I don't consider myself a Christian, but I do consider myself a deist because it is at this point right now. It is more likely for me to think that something can't come from nothing.
More likely for you. So do you have your own personal reality, and the rest of us are just not a part of it? Okay. So you care about whether or not something's true, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So if somebody made a claim, wouldn't you want to use the most reliable methods for determining whether or not that claim is true?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
But hang on. And we've already agreed faith is not a reliable method for determining truth, right?
To an extent, that's what
to an extent.
Yes, sir.
That just sounds like a really convenient way to weasel out of the fact that you've already acknowledged that it's not. So let's say that somebody claims some God exists. How do we find out whether or not that's true?
We can't, because...
If we can't, then why would you believe it? Why would you believe something that you cannot confirm?
Because even if you don't... even if you make that claim saying, oh, I can't confirm, you are still confirming that God is not existent because science says no.
No, you are so horribly confused. You're saying nothing like that at all. If somebody claims that a God exists, and you believe that there's no way to tell whether or not it's true, and you only want to believe things that are true, then you could not reasonably believe that God exists. That doesn't mean that you believe that no God exists, but you can't believe that God exists if you care about the truth and you acknowledge that there's no way to find the truth.
The answer here, you can say, I don't know. And that's a perfectly honest and legitimate answer. And at that point, you can say, I don't know, let's find out. Or I don't know, I'm not going to believe it until there's sufficient evidence. That's the type of stance that we'd like to see people take. And we think we can justify that stance.
And I can understand that stance that if someone says that they claim that they flew yesterday, I would love to actually see it first before I believe it. But
sure.
when it comes to that I understand.
Isn't a God a more miraculous claim than somebody flying? Isn't that even
The reason why though is because I think about supernatural. What is supernatural? Something that's not scientific. So
how do you?
I'm not sure I would define it that way.
What reason do you have to believe that anything supernatural could exist or does exist?
I have the feeling that you were going to say that. Because hold on a second.
Those are good questions to mull over.
I like the fact that you thought I was going to ask that. That shows me that you're at least thinking about this and not just, running on autopilot. But if the question is, it's a good question. If there are people who claim that there are things that are supernatural, and we don't seem to have any way to investigate it, and we don't have any way to demonstrate that it's even possible. So if you're going to say that your belief is founded on the supernatural, then you have to justify why you think the supernatural could exist or does exist. How do you do that?
As if you care about the truth of your answers.
Yeah. Basically, my standpoint is I think supernatural is untouchable to science.
Okay, that doesn't answer the question even remotely.
And if it's untestable, why believe it?
Why does it not answer the question? Because
the question was, Jeff, why do you believe? And you responded with, it's not touchable by science. That's not a reason why to believe.
make it not true.
Exactly, it doesn't make it not true, but that also doesn't make it true. You believe it's true, you have to offer a reason why you think it's true.
Yeah, okay,
And if, Jeff, if your reason why you believe that it's true is because we can't prove it's not true, that is also a fallacy, also an argument from ignorance.
That is why I'm saying it is safe. I'm not.
Okay, Jeff, I don't care. We've passed the point where I actually care, because.
Okay, well, can I just get one more minute just to give you an analogy of?
No, because I don't think an analogy from you would even be apt when you don't understand fallacies like the argument from ignorance. What we asked was, why do you believe in God? And you went with, well, it's more probable. And then you went with, it's faith-based. And then you went with, it's based on the supernatural. And when we asked why you believe in the supernatural, your claim was, I believe in the supernatural, essentially because you can't prove the supernatural doesn't exist. That is the sort of fallacious thinking that I don't know what value we could possibly get from an analogy, and I don't know how we get to truth from an analogy, especially one that's coming from someone who doesn't understand how fallacious their position is.
I understand that. It's just.
If you understood it, you wouldn't have said it.
Because I'm coming from a different direction.
I know, and I want to know what that direction is. And when we push, you get back to it's just faith, which you've already acknowledged is not a pathway to truth. And you claim that you care about truth. There's a massive conflict here with you, Jeff. You think you care about truth, but you don't want to rely on the methods that actually could get you closer to the truth. You do rely on methods that you acknowledge don't have any likelihood of getting you closer to the truth. That is a conflict.
Don't mind logical fallacies.
Yeah, you don't mind having fallacious positions, and you don't mind bouncing around to several different reasons. And instead of giving your reasons, on at least 4 occasions, you decided to point out that what we thought, or what you think we thought. But none of that sounds like somebody who cares about the truth.
Can I just ask you one more question, and then I'll go ahead and get off, because I don't want to hold up all the other callers. So it was just going to be, do you acknowledge though that there is still a possibility that something can exist without science says so?
Yes. Lots of things that we can actually be like virtually certain that there are things that are real that we don't know about yet. Yeah, does that mean that any particular posited thing that somebody claims is real is then real just because it might?
Yeah, 100 years ago, we didn't know there were other galaxies. We learned something. Isn't that awesome?
Okay. Because it still kind of sounds like that, even though that is a possibility.
No.
We're not going to hang our hat on it until we have evidence for it. That's the difference between us. You want to have this wishful thinking and go for it, and we want to be conservative and say, hey, let's not believe something until there's proper time to do so.
Is it possible that there's a teapot orbiting between Mars and Venus?
Could be.
I'll give you a little help. Why would you think that?
Well, see, here's the thing. That's a great question. Why would you think that? I wouldn't. But when we talked about possibility, you are making the same mistake that we hear over and over and over again. You are opting for this idea that something is possible if it hasn't shown to be impossible, and that's not true. It is something is possible or impossible, independent of whether you can show it.
It was because of the other way around. It was I'm not saying
the other way around is also false. Something isn't impossible just because it hasn't been shown to be possible. It is either true.
Saying there is no correct stance.
There is a correct stance. The correct stance is the claim has not met its burden of proof, therefore I do not accept it. Correct stance.
But there is still a claim standing that something can only be true if science says so.
No, which
you're trying to
I didn't even let you finish saying that at the beginning before I interrupted to say no, because you're so confused about this. That was the very beginning of the call. I know that was an hour ago.
Is it cool if I could just email you this? Can
Yeah.
I give you my email?
Sure. I wouldn't expect a great deal though. Here's the thing. It's a claim. Pick any claim, doesn't matter. It's either true or not true, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, if you believe it's true, and I don't believe it's true, does that mean I believe it's false? No.
Yeah.
No, it does not mean I believe it's false. If you believe it's false, if you believe the claim is false, and I don't believe the claim is false, does that mean I believe it's true?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I mean that. If Don either committed a crime or he didn't, I think he's guilty, and I am not convinced that he's guilty. Does that mean I'm convinced he's innocent?
Well, I mean, but that is...
Yes or no? Yes or no? If I'm not convinced that he's guilty, does that mean I am convinced he's innocent? No!
There's a third alternative, and that is, I don't know.
I am not convinced he's guilty, and I'm not convinced he's innocent, because neither potential outcome, even though those are the only two available, has actually met its burden of proof.
Well, I'm glad that okay, so that really helped a lot, because to me,
let me try it one more way, just because I'm not convinced that it's set in.
No, like...
No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, Jeff. I'm going to do this even if you hang up. There's on my desk, there's a jar full of gumballs.
Yeah.
Gumballs is either even or it's odd, right?
Sure.
If I don't believe the number is even, does that mean I believe the number is odd? Ah, thank you. You do get it. We have made progress.
Yes. Okay. So I think the main issue was I thought you guys are claiming a God is not true because there is no scientific evidence.
So science is one of the best ways to determine the truth, and there may be other ways too, and we're open to those. But you gotta give us some good reasons and some good validation for it.
So here's the last thing. You were convinced you understood our position, right?
Previously, yes.
Yeah,
but,
and you were wrong, right?
Sure.
So you're also convinced that there's a God, right?
I'm not convinced. It's more faith. Like it's.
Good answer.
I don't know.
Good answer.
Okay.
I think that's a good
way
to
dodge
start.
right at the end. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the call.
Well, he's not convinced. That's a good thing.
Well, it's not so much I'm convinced, but I believe it. Yeah. Now we're playing the synonym tap dance,
okay.
which I'll just avoid.
Over buildings, want to fly over the shores, save the people from the villains, catch the crooks who rob the stores, write my name upon the sky, and when you...
Should they be shaving them?
It's sexier if it's trimmed.
You just feel sexier when you manscape. You trim it up nice, and all of a sudden you get this boost of confidence. I go to the barber.
Not fun. But, all right, we got Jimmy in San Antonio. Thanks for waiting. Are you there?
Hey, what's up, Matt and Tracy?
Hello.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I think I spoke to Tracy once before, and I had mentioned mystical experience, the work that's being done at Johns Hopkins. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Matt.
May or may not be. I mean, I've heard a reference before, but you can continue talking to Tracy.
Or talk with Matt.
Sure. The Johns Hopkins, I think I said last time they were using intravenous psilocybin, but it was actually psilocybin in a pill form.
Okay.
And their findings are saying that it triggers what they're calling a mystical experience, and they've published papers in the Scientific Journal of Psychopharmacology. So I mean, it's stuff that they're taking pretty seriously. It's not just airy-fairy nonsense. That
so if it triggers something,
that they're labeling a mystical
that they're labeling a mystical experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
what he's saying.
Like
How do they know it's a
particular
mystical experience, and what do they mean by mystical experience?
Well, from what I've, I mean, you can look into it yourself, but from what
Yeah, it's a
I've studied,
10-year-old study. I've got it. I just pulled it up here. It's a 10-year-old press release from 2000. It's 2006, so it's almost 11 years old. Hopkins scientists.
they're continuing to do work right now.
Sure,
like
Hopkins scientists show hallucinogen in mushrooms create universal mystical. They even put it in quotes in the title, experience.
In the press release.
So what do they mean by mystical, and what relevant is it?
In other words, they're relating it to, the mystics throughout the ages who had similar altered states. And of course, I mean, people back then
What's an altered state? What's an altered state, and how do we define it? I don't mean to just be a pedantic prick. The language that we use surrounding these things matter, because if, like, for example, when they were talking about the God module in the brain, which I think may actually relate to this, that was a label they put on it, but it's not. There's no demonstrable link to a God thing. It's just, we are going to say this is the module in the brain that when we prod it and poke it or send current through it, people have experiences that they describe as spiritual. But that doesn't do anything to demonstrate that there's
actually
truth.
Spirit, yeah.
And all of these things, whether you're using probes in the brain or hallucinogens or whatever, now you're talking about a brain that it is in a chemically altered state. Why would you trust the information and experiences that come from a damaged, essentially, brain, a brain that is not functioning correctly? Why would you value that information more than a brain that's working correctly? I should say normally, but not correctly.
Well, we all know somewhat what altered states. We know what a cappuccino is. We know what, digestive problems. I mean, these are all subtle altered states. But I mean, we're talking about something very.
Jimmy, I'm sorry. You said we all know altered states. I'm not completely sure that I do. I know that there are claims about altered states. But did you also say cappuccino?
Yeah, like, a caffeine rush or, some wine.
Okay, I thought there was an altered state called a cappuccino, and I don't even know what a cappuccino is because I'm not a coffee drinker.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant like a caffeine rush.
Okay, so chemicals like caffeine affect the body. Got it.
Yeah. So
what does that tell us?
What they're talking about is a very particular altered state of consciousness. That they're labeling mystical experience, and they defined it by certain characteristics that manifest.
Well, I think they're reaching back to the idea that this is what has traditionally been called a mystical experience, and what they're saying is they can recreate this using these drugs.
Yeah, from the work of William James and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and William Griffiths, the guy who leads the study, as well as a lot of people who've had this type of experiences, they end up with a view that I think is alternative from atheism and theism, where they see religion as a byproduct of mystical experience, like all the major figures in history, like Muhammad and Christ and so forth, Gautama.
Okay, so let me ask this. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that, other than words like spiritual and mystical, are not very well defined. And so, if they think, let's
they define them in the study.
Okay.
I'm sure they would.
I mean, they are well defined.
I guess what I need to ask is this: are we talking about experiences that people label as mystical because that's just the label they put on them, or are we trying to argue that there is something supernatural about it, or is it just all natural?
No. I think what they're trying to point out is, I mean, most people have not had this experience, and so, I mean, they are trying to define it. It is an altered state. It has nothing to do with the supernatural.
Okay.
It's something that there's,
So basically, you're calling in to talk about how Johns Hopkins has given drugs to people, and they had strange experiences that they would call mystical.
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it that way, because they're concluding that it's something. What they're triggering the mystical experience, the reason why they kind of separate it from just getting high on drugs is because it would be otherwise natural to human beings. So, like, if you engage a discipline like meditation or asceticism, or it's also speculated to occur in near death, you would have a similar experience.
Okay.
And I mean,
no, Jimmy. Here's what I'm asking. All of this is about something that is natural, right?
Yes.
I don't understand the point. I don't understand how, I mean, okay, there's potential coolness here. I think if anything, it would kill off religious ideas about the supernatural as, hey, you know, we can have these experiences through other or similar quality experiences through other ways. Not that it would remotely support any religious thing, but at the end of the day, we're still just talking about, hey, people have been reporting experiences and labeling this way, and now we can induce them. Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of, a perspective that emerges from these investigations into the mystical experiences, what they're referring to as perennial philosophy. I think I mentioned it last time to Tracy. I don't know if she ever bothered looking into it, but like, you know, Aldous Huxley, Terence McKenna, so on and so forth, they, after these types of experiences, they had this view where they no longer saw religion as an argument whether God exists or not, but they saw these very specific altered states as bringing religion as a byproduct. So, you know, that Gautama, when he had this experience, he would go on to found Buddhism, Christ, so forth. And I mean, the characteristics inside these experiences do relate to all the, you know, the literature in religion. Like, I know a lot of people joke about, you know, being one with everything, but the way they characterize it in the experience is that you have a literal impression of a unity inside a phenomenon in consciousness.
Okay.
You know, and
why should I care about any of this, I guess is what I'm asking.
Because, I mean, I would think that maybe it might change your perspective as well. Instead of seeing
change it to what? I already accept the natural world, and I accept that people have different experiences, which we can also induce. We can have
a more perennial perspective, like the individuals who, like Roland Griffiths. I mean, his idea on religion now is not, you know, like
you keep
nonsense.
You keep mentioning names. I prefer ideas. I don't give a rat's ass about a name.
Well, perennial philosophy, the idea that religion is actually a byproduct of this particular altered state.
Okay, I don't care. I'm asking why I should care about this. My issue is this. Are the claims of a particular religion true or not? It might be interesting to say that some religions are. Do you think that you're going to go up to any individual who's religious and say, hey, maybe religions are all a byproduct of, you know, mushrooms and meditation experiences that produce the same sorts of effects? What do you think what impacts that going to have on them?
I prefer to speak to atheists because most theists are kind of closed-minded about it. They will think you're the devil, and even talking about it.
I'm just wondering.
Contemporary churches even discuss it.
Of course not, because they have a relationship with the risen Christ. That's their perspective on it. So, you know, it's like when I talked with Ray Comfort. There's no way to convince him that God doesn't exist because God is as real to him as his wife. That's what he said.
Well, I mean, if this view is correct, then that means that all of contemporary, you know, Western religion today has lost touch with its roots.
Wrong. That's a fallacy. Okay, the fact that we can replicate similar types of experience doesn't show you that any other one is actually not true. It could be the case that Jehovah's Witnesses are the one true religion that have a tie to a God, and they experience something that's spiritual. And even if everybody else's religion is a false byproduct of the sort of thinking and problems with a brain on hallucinogens or in a meditative state, that doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not the Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong. So you can't say.
Well, I mentioned more in the vein of Alan Watts, the way he would speak about perennial philosophy is that Christ was put on a pedestal. So he was the one appointed being to have such an experience, but no one else. So it squeezed the possibility out. Whereas if you go to Eastern religions where they practice these meditations in temples and so forth, they're actually attempting to engage this experience. They have a relationship with it, whereas the Buddha wasn't placed on a pedestal. They realized that it's a potential in everyone, but in a pre-scientific way of speaking about it. You have samadhi or you have nirvana. It was kind of
the only way this is relevant is if the experiences they have are leading them to a truth.
Well, I mean, you could almost say that the samadhi is a synonymous term for mystical experience.
I don't know what the hell that has to do with what I just said. Seriously, I mean.
You said leading them to a truth, so they are engaging some type of altered state.
What good Jimmy? What good is a mystical experience? Is it teaching us something that's true? The way they characterize it, I'm really not sure, but it may be. I mean, the one core aspect of mystical experience is this felt sense of unity. You know, that everything in the cosmos has one single unity. Okay.
It's kind of like, can I help
please,
for a minute?
Please.
What if everyone who went through this came to the conclusion that there are two suns in the sky, and they all declared that they could see two suns? I think what Matt is asking is, okay, so people do these things, they come to similar conclusions, we can induce this similar state in a lab. Does that mean that there's some ultimate truth there that they're seeing that we can confirm is actually accurate? That it maps to the world in some real way that anybody else's belief doesn't?
I mean, what I see is if you see all religion as a byproduct of mystical experience, and the underlying core of whatever they profess, when you scratch all religions, you're going to find the insights gained from these types of experiences.
And I pointed out that that's a fallacy. You cannot conclude that all religions are byproducts of mystical experiences. Have you investigated all religions and confirmed that they are?
That is what perennial philosophy is.
You cannot test for that.
What I'm wondering is, would you accept that people can come to the same conclusions from different perspectives, like that two people can look at different things and ultimately still derive the same information from it?
In this day and age, I think that's what happened. I think like all this people like I've just mentioned, like Aldous Huxley, Terence McKenna, they did come to this conclusion. Like once they had this experience,
right. But what I'm saying is it possible that there are multiple ways to investigate something that would drive you to the same conclusion? That maybe you could do different experiments that were both valid but different, and still derive the same conclusions from them?
Perhaps. I mean, the reason they use psilocybin.
I think you could, but what I'm saying is, what if these religions, these Western religions, come to these insights through a particular route, and these other people are coming to these same conclusions from another route? I mean, isn't it possible that one route doesn't invalidate the other route? Like if I decide that, hey, we should love each other, and I come through my life experiences which are completely different than someone else's, and they come to that same conclusion, isn't it possible that we reach that conclusion both through valid means coming at it through an entirely different path?
I think you could, but I mean, one reason I think people do is because the experience is universal. It's not, you don't have to be religious to have it. For instance,
no, and that's fine. That's what I'm saying. You can go another route, right? Like this person took mushrooms, this person read their Bible or something.
Yeah.
But they came to the same conclusion. And what I'm saying is maybe the fact that someone got there through a mushroom doesn't invalidate the fact that someone else picked up a Bible and saw that passage and they related to it and adopted it for themselves through that method.
You could probably come to it conceptually, I think, but a lot of mystical experience is usually characterized by like intuition, like it kind of shoves it in your face. And like for instance, like an atheist that might have this experience, he may not be inclined to call it God, but he may say something equally absurd as like, I felt I was somehow able to glimpse a higher dimension. And this was, this is his what he could squeeze out of the experience.
Are there higher dimensions?
No, this is not necessarily to say.
Okay,
it's just this is the impression.
Saying how somebody might describe it if they didn't believe in God.
I care about what's actually real. Why are we talking about flights of fancy?
Well, I mean, this is all just metaphor, but it's what's real is the experience, and it's very, it is. People underestimate it.
Jimmy, I'm desperate to find a reason to care, and I swear, reading off the names on the books on your shelf, it does nothing. And saying, hey, this is all just metaphor. I'm concerned about the real world and about claims and whether or not they're true. And I care about whether or not people's beliefs are rationally justified. I'm still desperate to find anything in what you're talking about that is relevant.
Well, I think I mean, it all points to the universal experience, like all these.
So,
things
do you
come on
believe
the-
that? I don't know what you mean by universal experience and why. And when you say it all points to the universal experience, please tell me what that
Like, in
means.
other words, you could potentially have this experience if you partook. They.
I don't care about the experience, Jimmy. I don't care who could have it. I want to know about whether or not what the experience points to is true.
Right. I mean, because frankly, we could all sit in an electric chair and have the same experience.
We could all be lobotomized and have the same experience, but that doesn't give us information on reality.
In whether everything is truly a unity or not, I mean, I don't know if we can answer that. And to know if whatever it's showing us is true,
What do you mean by everything being a unity?
Well, I mean, there's an intuition inside the experience that everything is intimately interconnected in ways.
I don't give a rat's ass about intuitions. I care about reality.
I think from a physics standpoint, isn't everything already demonstrated to be connected, or at least
when's the last
solidly theorized? I mean,
has science started using intuition as a method now?
No, I think mystics have used that.
Right, I mean, and I'm asking you why we should care about mystical intuitions. Are they leading us to truth?
I think they're saying one and the same thing with what physicists are now discovering, you know?
You think mythicists' intuitions are saying the same thing as what physicists are now saying? About what?
Yeah, like about everything being ultimately one.
I think you're hung up on metaphor. Because first of all, what physicists mean, well, all right, go find a physicist who actually says everything is one. I don't know any that I'm aware of. They're probably out there. Find out if they mean the same thing as the intuitions, because now we've gotten to the point where some typical intuitionist, this vague, everything is one, and now you're looking to see if you can find a way to make modern notions about the world that are based on evidence fit that. That is exactly the same thing that charlatans do when they make a vague prediction and then we call it prophecy. It's the same thing that happens when people go looking through Nostradamus' text and saying, oh, if you read this way, it's talking about JFK. It's the same thing that happens when you put the Bible code text together and go doing your circle word find and say, look, it predicted Trump. It didn't. Here is completely backward. The time to believe something is when there's actual evidence for it. These intuitionists, there's no demonstration that they had advanced access to information just because you could take a metaphoric view of what they said and twist and turn it so that it matches up with something we now know is real. Because the only way we know it's real is from the science. Even if they were getting intuitions, they are completely useless until we verify them. So why should we care?
I wasn't directing your attention towards that. I think it offers an alternative perspective to atheism and theism. Like, you no longer see God.
How is this remotely? Okay, first of all, there's no alternative perception with regard to theism or atheism. There either is a God or there's not, right?
See, that's where I disagree.
No. Hang on. Either there is a God or there's not, right? Those are the only two options. Is there some other option? Have you managed to come up with a whole new type of logic?
That's what this is. I think that's what perennial philosophy is.
So you're throwing out logic. You're throwing out identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. You were saying that there's something else other than A and not A.
I think when you have this perspective, A becomes something else.
What is up with the perspective callers today? I don't care about perspective. I care about reality. Either something either a statement is true or it's not true. Those are the only two options.
Find God as like a.
I don't care about the definition, Jimmy. A statement, any statement, is either true or not true. Give me any other option other than true or not true.
I mean, I just think it's seen differently. Like, in other words, it doesn't completely reject the idea of God. It sees it as something else.
Why are you talking about God?
I thought this was an
I'm holding a bottle in my hand. Is that statement true or not true?
on whether you're holding it or not.
But he can't see.
Oh, you can't see, so you're not watching.
He is holding up a bottle.
You and I are having a conversation. Is that statement true or not true?
Sure, it's true.
Okay, is there any other option other than true or not true?
I don't think so.
Well, you're right, there's not. I mean, this is what we understand about identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. So either a God exists, or either some God exists or no God exists. Those are the only two options, right?
Yeah, under a certain parameter.
Why did it take?
Yeah,
No,
so like,
what do you mean under certain parameters? What
like
other
if you
parameters?
define God,
Either some
I mean, people
God,
define God very differently.
Jimmy, statement, some God exists. That statement is either true or not true, correct?
But I also adhere to agnosticism.
There's no but. You can't say sure but. The answer is yes. That statement is true or not true.
But you're also using a vague word, like you're not defining it.
I'm
like,
not. It doesn't matter. It does. Fergal, burgle, manergal, burgle. That statement is true or not true?
If you're a pantheist, you think everything is God. So, you know, like, to them, that's true.
Jesus
it can either
H.
be
Christ.
true or not true.
I just mumbled a nonsense phrase. Fergal, burgle, manergal, burgle.
Yeah.
That nonsense phrase is either true or not true, correct?
Sure.
And there's no other option.
No, but again, I think it's really based on definitions.
No, it's not. Oh. It's just so confusing.
Yo, what up, bro?
You acknowledge this, and then you say, oh, but it's based on definitions. You don't understand the fundamental foundations of A or not A.
All right, well, then if you see it that way, then I suppose
It's not
the previous view.
What other way can you see it? What other way can you see it?
I mean, okay, an atheist defines God as
No, this has nothing to do with atheism or theism. This is about the structure of logic. A Venn diagram with a single circle. And everything is either inside that circle or not inside that circle, correct?
Oh, okay. To appease what you're saying, this perspective of perennial philosophy, I suppose, can be considered atheist in that it doesn't acknowledge the entity and the supernatural entity.
Please tell me two words in that last sentence that had anything the fuck to do with the Venn diagram I was talking about.
A Venn diagram. Well, I mean, I still don't understand your point.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
I give up.
I mean, I'm
not talking about God. I'm talking about raw foundational logic. Here's a statement. The statement, no matter what it contains, no matter what the definitions are, the statement is either true or not true, and those are the only two options.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
So here's a statement. Some God exists. By your own agreement, that statement is either true or not true.
Sure. It's either true or not true. I agree.
Okay. So either there's a God or there's not. No other option, right?
Okay.
5 minutes ago, so I guess that's progress.
No, I've always agreed with that. It's just that in perennial philosophy, like words like God, Brahman, are no longer seen in the light that they were seen as. I guess maybe an atheist or theist might look at it. It's all, you know. It's that's why I consider it an alternative perspective, because I mean, in other words, Brahman is the metaphor out of the mystical experience, like or samadhi or the beatific vision in Christianity, the agape.
If I let you keep talking, I'm going to get fired, Jimmy. I'm sorry. And they can't even really, I mean, the board could say you're done, but doesn't matter whether you're talking about perennial philosophy, because that's true or not true. The Brahman notion of God, that's true or not true. Doesn't matter what it is. Everything is either true or not true. About whether or not it's true. So telling me about mysticists who are having these intuitions that you can view as metaphor and manipulate them so that they seem to match something else somebody else found in reality. My answer is, so what?
So what?
The reason those things are valuable is because somebody found them in reality, not because somebody intuited them.
Yeah.
They're of no value until we confirm them.
And I think it's also a misunderstanding sometimes when Well, and it might not even be in this case, but a lot of times people do misunderstand when a study comes out like that and they use that, word in quotes, and they take it to mean a little bit, I think, I don't mean a little bit more, but they give it a little more emphasis sometimes than I think it is intended. Say, hey, putting people on anesthetic gives everybody pretty much, the same
already been here for an hour.
Putting people on all kinds of drugs will give them very similar experiences. It'll affect your brains in similar ways because we're all human beings with very similar brains.
It's not that I'm not interested in a scientific study that shows that we could induce these things. Sure. It's what does it tell us?
That last dude was getting nowhere fast.
We'll start off with Jurist from Wisconsin. How are you?
How you doing, Matt?
Pretty good.
I got a few questions, I guess. You remember the show you guys had a couple of weeks ago about with the brain dead woman?
Yes.
Yeah, and they were saying dead is dead. Brain dead is dead.
Yes.
But she actually wasn't dead.
Actually, she was dead.
No, she's alive.
And I think now she is, right?
Yeah, you know they took her off the machine, right?
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about
Well,
as dead as you
now
get.
she is. But at that time, when the whole debate was going on, she actually wasn't dead.
Well, there were machines pumping fluid through her body and keeping her organs alive.
Well, they had her on a ventilator. Her heart just kept going.
Sure.
So they kept her on a ventilator. But if you would have cut her, she would have bled, and if you would have stitched her up, she would have healed.
Well, you know what? When somebody's dead, they still will bleed.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, actually, cut their head off. There's a whole bunch of blood keeps right on coming out.
Yeah.
And it's a case of, is that any kind of a quality of life that you think is?
Well, see, the child that was living within her, though.
Which was non-viable, by the way, and also dead.
What do you mean non-viable? We were all non-viable.
No, I'm sorry.
If you were non-viable, you wouldn't have been born.
But they're not all fetuses are actually viable. This one wasn't, and it's dead. You seem to have this really kind of simplistic notion of what life is and what counts. But anyway, you had emailed us with all sorts of points, and you have other questions over here. So go ahead and get to whatever you called about.
Okay, what is atheism based on?
Well, it depends. Not all atheists are atheists for the same reasons. Some are. Did I finish my answer?
Damn, not that catfish.
Yeah. Some are atheists.
But I don't never really think about fish until somebody else mentioned that shit. Then I'd be like, you know what? I could go for a good piece of fish right now.
I'm sure there are plenty of atheists who are atheists for really bad reasons, reasons that aren't, logically sound and aren't based on.
I cooked the whole chicken yesterday, so I'm having leftovers.
I don't see where that matters that much, because the burden of proof.
And tomorrow I might chop half of that shit up and make like a chicken salad out of that shit or something.
What I'm saying is your worldview logical? Because you can't use reason and logic to prove reason and logic.
Damn, that catfish though.
But I understand the problem you see with it. I don't understand why you're raising this point though.
Well, because it's inherently circular. So you can't say that your worldview is logical.
No,
and reasonable.
You're confusing the fact that you cannot demonstrate the completeness of this. But as far as practical demonstrations of what's reasonable and logical, it's about internal consistency. And since it's all consistent with the universal experience, and because we can demonstrate the absurdity of the logical absolutes not being true,
is that absolutely true?
Yes.
Well, then you just demonstrated there is the truth.
Okay. I don't know why you're objecting to that. Did I claim there wasn't?
Yeah, you just said you can logically demonstrate that there's absurdities to absolute truth.
Yes. No. I said to the logical absolutes. None of this has anything to do with what you wrote, with what you asked. So, I mean, can you get to whatever your question is?
Okay, so now my next question
is part of the leftovers.
You said that you're
oh, that catfish gonna be gone.
The peaceful or good separation of church and state?
Yes, we support separation of church and state.
Well, so why why is it that your spirituality should be the only thing that the government is based on?
That's not a spirituality, you dumb fuck.
No,
What are
we
you talking
don't,
about?
and we're not expecting the government to be based on our spirituality at all.
Well, I guess we have to understand what spirituality is.
That'd be really good, since nobody seems to have a good enough definition.
It doesn't even matter what you think what spirituality is. It has to do with the fact that the government and that what separation of church and state is about is the government not either advocating or sticking its nose in the religious affairs of citizens whatsoever, no matter what their beliefs or spirituality might happen to be.
That's exactly what the First Amendment is. The First Amendment is not the separation of church and state. It's just that the government can't tell people how to practice their religion and the free exercise thereof.
Yeah,
and
that's separation of church and state.
That's why Jefferson referred to that as a, quote, wall of separation.
But that had nothing to do with individuals, say, recriminalizing homosexuality. People would say that that's something that you shouldn't be doing. Because it's religious.
I'm not necessarily. Well, it depends. If you are doing it on religious grounds, and so that would put the government in the position of endorsing a specifically religious view, then yes, we could object on church-state separation grounds. But I'm not necessarily sure that that's the case, and I don't know why you went to that particular example.
Well, I'm just saying because what happens here is that what separation of church and state does is it creates an environment where Christians don't have any say in their culture.
That's absolutely completely false. What it does is it makes sure that Christians and other people of other religion can't, by virtue of establishing a majority, legislate their personal religious convictions onto others in violation of rights established by the Constitution.
Well, the rights of the Constitution say that you have the right to free exercise of your religion.
Yes, and do you not realize that that is not an all-encompassing statement, that person A's exercise of their religious beliefs can come into conflict with person B's exercise of religious beliefs? And James Madison pointed out that the only valid interference of government and religion was to settle disputes between religions over issues like that.
No, see, what you're failing to realize is that it's a battle of ideas. Ideas are inherently spiritual.
Sorry, no. Can you define spiritual?
Yeah, you're throwing out a bunch of words, and you're not.
I'm going to define spiritual for you. Spiritual is something that has no mass or energy. It can't be detected.
Okay, so what's the difference between that and something that just doesn't even exist at all?
Well, whether it exists, just because you can't test it, physically test it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
What you're saying is
we're not saying. He didn't say any. He didn't make any assertions that something doesn't. Jurist, let me finish. He didn't make an assertion that something doesn't exist. He asked you what's the difference between your definition of spiritual, because things that don't exist fit into your definition of spiritual as you presented it.
And you gave your definition of spiritual is also entirely based on negative attributes.
No,
it's a thing that has no mass, and it has no volume, and it has no this and it has no that. Then what I would like to know is what is spiritual then? If I don't want to know what spiritual is not, tell me what it is. What is it comprised of? And why is it meaningful? And it must be comprised of something meaningful if you think ideas originate there. So what is it?
Ideas are not physical, so they have to be spiritual.
Well, I don't necessarily know that you are correct, because it depends, if you let me finish, on what you mean by ideas. Because I have an idea, which means that I'm thinking. And there's a discrete brain state that represents my brain actively processing that idea. What is the idea itself? Does it even exist as a thing?
Yes.
Prove it.
Well, how can I think, therefore I am.
That is, I think. That is not a claim that the idea exists. I think that idea. No, it's not. Look, you are so confused. I think, therefore I am, in no way demonstrates that an idea exists as something neither physical nor conceptual or whatever. I think, therefore I am was developed by Descartes to demonstrate a solution to hard solipsism of the self. because I think there must necessarily be some entity who is doing the thinking, even if it's being deceived, because there must be some subject that is being deceived. This has nothing to do with whether or not ideas exist as discrete entities unto themselves. There must be a brain in I think, therefore I am.
And a brain creates ideas.
Does it?
Do rocks create ideas?
Do they?
You see, what atheism boils down to is that you can't know anything.
That's not true. Atheism has nothing to do with whether or not you can know anything. Atheism is the position of not believing in a God. It has nothing to say, if let me finish or I swear I'm going to hang up on you. It has nothing to say about methods of epistemology. It may be derived from examining methods of epistemology, but atheism itself has no position on methods of epistemology.
Wait, I thought it was based on logic and reason.
No, because you don't listen. What I said is that some have reached this position as the result of exercising logic and reason, and some haven't. That is. Do you not understand a causal chain would begin with logic and reason, and some people have come to the conclusion that the God claims have not met their burden of proof? That does not mean that atheism is generating a position about epistemology. It means that an epistemological position has been used to generate this tentative conclusion about a specific claim.
And how do you test that claim?
Test what claim?
The claim that logic and reason has proven that their claims are bad.
Okay, so the claim, some God exists, is the claim that needs to be tested and demonstrated, and until it's done so, by default, it has not done so.
Well, there's only two choices. Either God exists or he doesn't.
Correct.
And if God doesn't exist, then logic and reason are impossible.
How do you know that?
How do you get that? If you can't use logic and reason to test and prove that logic, you have to start from a...
No, that's not that doesn't answer the question. Well, the question is, how does the absence of a God make the processes of logic and reason impossible for minds to engage? You haven't answered that question, and in order to do so, first you have to demonstrate. You have to put this as a falsifiable situation, right? You have to, in a universe in which a God doesn't exist, what would we expect the conditions to be? Okay, you have to be able to speak on that meaningfully. You have to be able to give examples that can then be tested and demonstrated to be more likely to be factual than not. I mean, in a universe without a God, you're basically saying that people couldn't think.
Correct.
Now, how?
Oh, Woody Harrelson? I gotta see that shit.
Might be good to have Doctor look at you sometime. I ain't got no bulletin. Because I was covering you. You may have heard there was prison break. It was Bonnie and Clyde. Governor, this has to end. They committed dozens of armed robberies and several cold-blooded murders.
What do you plan to do about Bonnie and Clyde?
We will capture them. Write that down and underline it twice.
There's only one man who can take them down. I'll come back.
Hey, you got room for one more?
Not even packed. Ah, Judas Priest, get in.
This is 1934. Gangsters, submachine guns. And you put cowboys on Bonnie and Clyde?
Texas Rangers.
This is an emergency alert. Police are not yet releasing details, but have stated that Bonnie and Clyde may have struck again.
Forgive me for the I have seen. This is a highly coordinated operation.
So much pain and suffering.
Roadblocks. Air surveillance. Your time has passed, cowboy.
What the hell is the world coming to? Used to be you had to have talent.
Yeah, I'll watch anything with Woody Harrelson in it. He the fucking man. He the main man. Woody, that motherfucker is trip, yo. So normally on Wednesday nights I do childcare at my job Wednesday evenings, but a lot of people got sick kids, and the families that came tonight, nobody had kids, so I haul ass early. I let everybody know, like, no kids, yo, I'm out, yo, with a smile on my face, like, bye. And they asked the other lady, it was like, oh, are you gonna stay and help clean up, and y'all ladies got it? Cause I'm gone. So I actually got home early this evening, earlier than I normally do. Shit, most Wednesdays I don't get home until 8:30, 9 o'clock. I got home like 6 o'clock. So I'm gonna take full advantage of these extra few hours I got today. I said I'm about to go eat something. I don't know if I'll play the game or not. I haven't been playing the game lately. I've been trying to read this damn book, yo. That book that mentioned the Wuhan virus is getting pretty good. And then I see how he got it laid out too. The whole book take place just in a couple of days. Like the first section is the 30th, and then the next section is the 31st, and I'm like, I didn't understand the numbers at first, but then when you read it, it was like they said the date. I was like, oh, okay. So far, I'm like, I ain't even read 100 pages yet. Like 75 pages, 80 pages, and it's everything that's happened in the first 80 pages. All of that shit took place in 2 days. So I'm getting to the section where it's gonna go to the next day. But it's cool. I like how you got it laid out like that. Alright. Man, I keep trying to play that Deus Ex game. When I got to this one part, man, I'm stuck like hell on that shit. Alright guys, this painting is coming along nicely. And we got another one started, so we're in good shape for right now. Once again, as always, y'all know I appreciate y'all chilling in the studio with me, checking out some of this art and education. Did an hour and a half this evening. Fallout, bro. I ain't gonna lie, yo. And I'll do a name drop. But I follow this one streamer, his name, the Rad Brad, and he plays that's all he does for a living, yo. Motherfucker, his videos get like 37,000 views, 50,000 views, all that shit. Yeah, he one of those guys, like he been doing it for 10 years and that's all he do. To the point where in one video he played the expansion for the new Exodus Metro game, and he said that the company sent him the game and said, hey, we'll sponsor you if you play this for us. And that's just how popular the dude is, yo. The Rad Brad. But I was watching him play Fallout 4 when it first came out. I watched his video clips from that because he was fucking super excited. He was fucking thrilled over that shit, yo. And he just uploaded a video. He played the demo for the new Final Fantasy VII remake. I know I might actually watch that while I eat my food and see what that game look like. But yeah, if y'all want to watch a gamer just play some shit, yo, he plays all the fucking games, yo. The Rad Brad, check him out. I don't know. I might hop on the game. Oh, 76. Yeah, that Always Online. Didn't they do like a big update for it? They added like another part to it where it is kind of like the older Fallouts, and you get mission. I don't know. I think I did hear something about a big ass expansion added or is coming to Fallout 76. I didn't pick it up, man. I watched a couple people play that shit, and I was like, I don't know. Anyway, peace till next time.